To understand non-duality, we must first understand what the current cultural paradigm leads us to believe and why this belief doesn't hold ground. Our upbringing and our interactions with others throughout our lives has subconsciously led us to believe that we are something that we are not. Checking out my video on the process of individuation will give you a very useful context here. We essentially mistake our self-constructed identity for who we are. This identity is critical to navigating everyday life, so it shouldn't be discarded. However, one should notice that the constructed identity is just that, and not what the individual actually is. We have a notion that we are young, old, black, white, smart, stupid, attractive, ugly, sporty, nerdy, confident, insecure, tall, short, wealthy, poor, the list goes on. But what are these attributes but fabrications constructed by the individual in order to gauge the place of the individual in the society or larger group? They have no objective truth to them because they are only defined against others in the same situation. So if one isn't the identity constructed by oneself, then who are you? The natural impulse of the person is to assign a label to what you are, like your name or your species. This is another falsehood. Where do you draw the line on where you begin? Is it your skin? Is it your nervous system? You must remember that all your cells are somewhat living things in themselves and get replenished on a regular basis. Now, since we've discovered the limits of the cultural paradigm on who you claim to be, let's explore non-duality and why this shift in perception essentially resolves this stubborn problem. Non-duality essentially states that there is a fundamentally irreducible aspect of who you are, or what is. This element that everything else is built upon is what we call consciousness. Now, dual consciousness, which our culture believes in, is where there is an observer perceiving consciousness from a particular point, whereas non-dual awareness is where the consciousness is more primary than the observer, so that a field is there and the observer is superimposed on this field, in contrast to the observer being more primary and perceiving this field being consciousness. Meditation, mentioned in earlier videos, is so powerful because it is the practice of perceiving reality as it really is, which is just the field of consciousness always present, rather than all the fictions constructed by one's mind about reality that distorts what really is so the individual can survive more effectively in the world. Now, let's explore the structure of this non-dual experience in more detail to get a better understanding and framework of the nature of reality. You can think of experience as a cake with multiple layers. At the most fundamental level, as we have already mentioned, is consciousness. Layered on top of this base level of consciousness is the knowledge that the individual has accumulated consciously and unconsciously. This level acts as a filter of perception to the person's conscious mind. Next, we have the experience layer. You can think of this layer as the subjective experience of the person in day-to-day life. It constitutes the distorted perception of reality that has been filtered through past knowledge. You can think of this as different smells, colours, sounds, words, etc. that are subconsciously filtered into such categories. And finally, at the top level of our cake, we have the object that is in the experience of the individual. This is similar to the experience layer, but experience is further cut up into smaller pieces to make it easier for the individual to navigate the world. Think of it as a survival toolkit, like your phone, your keys, your body, or your car. Notice these things aren't absolutely separate from the environment, but arbitrary lines are drawn subconsciously so the individual can survive more conveniently. A quote from Ken Wilber reaffirms my point when he says, "Boundary lines of any type are never found within the real world itself, but only in the imagination of the mapmakers." Now, understanding this new system of reality, we have a better framework of understanding non-duality. One cannot understand non-duality through concepts and knowledge, because these are higher levels of the cake exploring the same level. What we need to do is find a method of exploring the lower levels of the cake, so you can become directly conscious of what is really going on. This is also where meditation comes in as the perfect tool to experience non-duality, as it is a means of letting go of perception and knowledge, so you can directly experience consciousness itself without any subconscious lines drawn. This, ultimately, will lead to a collapse of all lines and dualities in your awareness, such that you become your environment, which is equivalent to an enlightenment or non-dual experience. Now we understand non-duality better, we can start to look at its utility in creating a better life for yourself and others. It's far too easy to think of this as simply airy-fairy and practical stuff, but this should be the key pillar that should give your life direction. If you are to ask yourself, what are you doing in your life and where are you going? You're probably just looking to others for direction or chasing pleasure and status. And this is right for some people who want to be like everyone else. But for those who wish to self-actualize or have a goal to strive for that will ultimately make you fulfilled, then orienting your life around non-duality is perfect for you. It will ultimately ground you in your life, and it will be the one thing that isn't transient and cannot be taken away, because it is the one thing that is true and fundamental in life. This concludes this video on non-duality as a system. We'll touch on different aspects of it in further videos because it is so fundamental to my channel, so we can gain a better understanding of it and how to become aware of it. Let's wrap it up with another quote from Chuang-Tzu. Great knowledge sees all in one. Small knowledge breaks down into many. Thank you for listening.